And welcome everybody to another episode of The Most Important Conversations. I'm here with Jenna Smith, my co-host. How are you doing today, Jenna?
Good. I am in Virginia, so different background.
Ooh, little John Denver today, huh? West Virginia. Are you in Virginia, not West Virginia? And they don't have an East Virginia, do they? It's just Virginia or West Virginia. Okay.
Yeah. Don't
All
ask
right.
me any questions about that because I do not know them. I'm just here.
I'm on this place on planet Earth called Virginia.
Yeah.
Virginia. Okay. Named after someone named Virginia.
Yeah.
Well, we are following up our last episode, and Jenna, you and I talked about how we wanted to kind of do a deeper conversation because we felt like we were just kind of getting into it last time. And, we were talking about, how do you feel safe in a relationship? What does safety look like in a relationship, especially in these changing times right now where, there's so many things that can make us feel unsafe in our relationship, even things that aren't directly related to our relationship. They still have a knock-on effect to how we are relating. So whether that's uncertainty about career, uncertainty about the trajectory of the world, uncertainty about, money, uncertainty about health. There's just so much change right now going on in the world, and relationships are going to suffer if people are not sort of up to date on how to sort of stand strong in and of themselves. If people are not spending time working on themselves, if people are not spending time attending to themselves. And it sounds kind of weird. And so I want to start with a bit of a question to you. So I've always said to people that in order to have a really healthy, strong relationship, there's a certain level of selfishness required, which seems a little bit paradoxical. Like, it's like, oh, I'm in a relationship and yet you're telling me to be selfish, right?
Yeah.
So, and there's a couple other topics we want to talk about today, such as like, that are affected by that. If I'm in a relationship, does it mean we always have to agree? If I'm in a relationship, do we need to share the same values? If I'm in a relationship, is my, what impacts my safety? Is it things like predictability? Can I predict things? And for men and women, it's going to be different. But why don't we start with just an introductory dialogue around the importance of being selfish in a relationship, which I think is a way to even frame this. This conversation is about safety in a relationship, but I'm saying for you to be safe, you got to be selfish. Let me just pause on that and invite you into that idea. What do you think about that?
Yeah. You have to have a self relationship. So I would say that people have migrated too far from themselves in order to relate to others, where they'll leave themselves for other people and think that that equals connection. Okay, sacrifice, relationships are sacrifice. It's just, I think a lot of resignation and toleration of not relating well has led to that. So that's that. But to know yourself, to know I need to go to bed at this time, I call it being a self-anthropologist. So when I work with clients, we need to study yourself, like those Disney narrated wilderness shows where they're like, ooh, the thing does this. And I've talked about this before, but to watch yourself with curiosity and then know how to relate to others. If a need isn't getting met, if your needs aren't getting met by yourself, you're going to project that onto the person. I'm grumpy because of you. It's like, no, you should have went to bed at 9. If that is when is ideal for you. So the selfish is allowing you to be generous in relationship, but most people don't see it that way until they learn stuff we're talking about.
Yeah. And I think in these moments of profound change where a lot of the systems and structures that have provided the perception of safety for people, because it's predictable. See, this is where all these things kind of compound on each other, right?
Yes.
Right. So there's these moments in time where there's enormous amounts of change. We can't predict the future. That causes our reptilian mind to basically perk up and go, uh-oh, it's unpredictable. And there's sort of a correlative effect where without realizing, you might say, well, I there's so much change. I can't predict what's happening right now. Can I even trust the relationship I'm in?
Well, because now that's how you're relating to reality. No, I don't. Oh, you just did this, and then you're just hyper aroused too.
Right.
For threat, seeing the threat, confirmation bias. So yeah, like reeling it all in and having a strong self relationship is going to be so key for people that are listening today.
Yeah. And I think that this goes to there's a great book that I've talked about before on different episodes called The Uncontrollability of the World. And it basically articulates that for human beings to be in a place of profound strength and security begins with, and this is what we talked about on our last episode, self-trust. Right.
Mhm.
So on this episode, we're kind of deepening that conversation. We started around safety and relationships and the need to develop self-trust. And we're adding to it. And to develop self-trust is likely going to require a certain amount of selfishness on your part. Because, as you always talk about, relationships aren't just the relationships with the others. And in the uncontrollability of the world in that book, he talks about how we're always trying to control everything outside of ourselves, including other people. But the reality is we don't
People.
control. What's that?
Especially other people. Like if
Especially other people.
you need to change this so I could be okay. Mm-hmm.
Right. And so he talks about how the mistake that human beings make is our focus is out there in like the world of effects, which includes people you may be in intimate relationship with, because they're not you. They're still an out there phenomenon. They're still having their own perceptual experience. They have things happening to them. They have their own inner thoughts, their own inner sort of dynamics going on. And really, it's kind of funny when you think about what relationships are. It's like we're all trapped in our own little perceptual bubbles, and relating is the exchange of our respective experiences in our perceptual bubble. And to the extent that our perceptual experiences align enough, then we say, okay, I want to spend more time with you. Right. But the key point here, and then I'll let you jump in, is it's all about you. The selfishness piece to this is relating to yourself first before you ever start relating to other people. The mistake so many people make, like in the book, which wasn't, by the way, about relationships. It was just about, generally speaking, the world is uncontrollable. And the only way for you to stand in a place of power is to turn inward and focus on yourself and not be trying to control all of, the craziness out in the world. That includes the people you're in relationship with. But how many people actively, regularly do that, if not even know that? Most of us in relationships, the way we relate is, like you just said, trying to control the other person. And that, in good times, when there's not a lot of other friction going on, when there isn't money distress, health distress, climate distress, political distress, and all the change we're experiencing, when that's not going on, most couples can kind of navigate that to a certain degree because their nervous systems aren't like blown up. But we're seeing more and more people who are coming undone in this moment of change, and it's going to come home to roost, literally, in the relationship dynamics.
Absolutely. Yep.
So talk a little bit about how can people start to reorient themselves around being selfish, taking care of themselves. And like, I think a lot of people might even feel bad about that. Like, what do you mean being selfish?
The conditioning will make you feel bad. So you have to first acknowledge that there's been conditioning that is well intentioned to care for others. Don't think about yourself. And I think the wisdom of that, by the way, is like, don't think about your small self. Oh, I'm tired. Here. Oh, look, I have to pick up the kids from school. Like, yes, override that voice. But do you override your basic needs? No, not even basic needs, like your essence needs, beauty, like values. We're going to talk about values today too. Like what makes you you. To start to really get in connection to that is going to allow you to relate to your kids. One, teach your kids self-relationship. Oh, I can. Mom goes and does this, and then I see her journaling, and I see her listen to her favorite song when she's in a bad mood. I saw her dance it off. Like you can blah 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 as much as you want, but when you're actually actively engaging in self-relationship, that's who your loved ones are going to watch, and that is the biggest change you can ever do. And we know this, right? Like oh, I watched how you did this new thing. A friend, an outward looking friend could say, I watched you do these things and then I've seen the results. I've seen how you have more levity or aliveness. Now I want to do that thing versus,
Mm-hmm.
I should read this book. Right.
Right.
So
So
relationship is the teaching to the people around you, but you need to do it for yourself so you can have yourself intact and not out of fear. So the reason you're doing it is so that you are in a place of wholeness so that then all of your other relationships will flourish.
define capital S self and small s self. How would you define that?
Small s self is the annoying voice in your head that gets impatient. It's the ego. It's the I don't want to. It's just like this. It's just that annoying part of you that's mammal. Like it's
Mm,
called. Oh, we walked yesterday. Like it. In my book, I call it training the mind puppy. It's like it's just this silly voice that doesn't like inconvenience and doesn't like this, but like to not let it lead,
mm,
right? But we
okay.
pay dollars for that. I don't want to give that away. Like it's just selfish. It's just the ego. What people are using.
Ego. Okay.
Yeah.
And big S. Big S is what you would call it your true self, your authentic self.
Yep. Your true self, like I like to say, like what makes you you. When you start to get curious about yourself and not so self-conscious. So to be self-aware versus self-conscious. So self-conscious is
Right.
concerned with what other people think of you, and then change yourself for that because you need to change. Like, no, the big self doesn't need to change anything. It just is. It's the
Mm-hmm.
tree. It's nature. You are nature. So like the essence self of you being your nature is already done. There's no
Yeah.
work on that. It's the when we talk like turning up the lantern, so everything that isn't you falls away. So
Mm,
that real self is already there. The world of fixing and contorting to societal metrics has caused people to think they need to do all these things. So to actually emanate and be that and relate from there is going to feel deeply satisfying to yourself. It's going to create safety. It's going to create, you don't really feel as alone. Interestingly enough, like you'll be alone and you won't feel as alone when you're with your big self, when you're with that authentic self.
okay. The distinction between small s self and big S self. And you were saying that small s self is effectively what we would normally consider like the ego, like the petty things that we tend to put so much emotional energy in relationship, which really shouldn't matter. And we don't attend to the large things, the big S self stuff, which begins with ourself, with our whole and completeness, being whole and complete as we are, because we're nature and how we are is perfectly fine. We're only not fine in the relative experience of the norms of society, but those are always changing. And the norms of our society we were talking about are changing dramatically right now in terms of what society is going to look like, what's expected of everyone, etc. But I want to come back to this petty, small s self that we all have had the experience of. I think people will hear what you're saying about, you know, that's the kind of stuff that you don't want to give a lot of energy to, attention to. But some of us are like, yeah, but he said this or she said that, and I just can't let that go because it drives me so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What do we
And
do
there's
in that
to
situation?
that. Okay, this is great because at first it does need attention, right? So it needs tending to. You had said that earlier, and like it's so great
Mm-hmm.
because you put the word attention to tend to something. There is, when I work with people often, and this isn't new to psychotherapy, like what is the positive purpose behind that need to be right? What's it trying to
Mm-hmm.
accomplish? To get to the need underneath the strategy. Because what needs to happen is there's a need that needs to be met. The mind goes, what needs to happen is that person needs to change for my need to be met. So it does the mechanics. It's not necessarily true, but once you lock in and like, no, it's your
Mm-hmm.
fault. When I'm with you, I feel this way.
Mm.
So that's logical to somebody, even though it's like they're with you, bringing up something within you that needs attention. So to
Right.
first give attention, what do I need here? What's actually going on? What am I trying to accomplish if that need was met?
Mm-hmm.
If I did this, I would feel what? If they put the toilet seat down, I would feel listened to. I would feel, I don't know. We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But You need to first to pay attention to what is that trying to get met. Now, once you've figured it out, now you have to drop it. So that's the thing, is like people are trying to get a need met, and that's authentic, and that needs attention. To say, oh, it doesn't matter isn't helpful. It does matter. Something needs attention. Once you figure it out, now you have to starve that voice. But they, no. Like now it's your self relationship where you put it on a leash. You're like, nope. And you decide, would I rather be, and who do I want to be here in this relationship too? And like flip it around instead of being like them. Like, who do I want to be right now? Do I want to be selfish? Do I want to be stingy? Do I want to be right? Do I like who I am when I'm doing that? So I don't know if what I said was linear enough, but you need to pay attention to it first to ascertain the need. But then anything after that is just noise and drama. And the small self is also like your separate self, me versus you versus together self, which would be like your source self, your natural self, wants harmony. But if you're in your small self, you want the fight.
In a lot of the work that I've done, I've found that what we're talking to about sort of these small self traits, in most cases, my experience, and I want you to compare what you've experienced so we can kind of tease this out a little bit. But in my experience, a lot of this small self stuff tends to be, coming back to that book, The Uncontrollability of the World, tends to be just an attempt to control our environment for better predictability. So you mentioned he didn't put the toilet seat down. If you step back, it's like, okay, well then put it down, right? But the fact that would become a complaint for people, it's really feeling out of control in life. And that little instance becomes an example where you can exert control to try to bring the nervous system back into some kind of regulation. So a lot of these petty things from my experience, and I'd like you to jump in, when people start doing the work, the introspective work that you're talking about, they'll realize so much of the petty stuff that we get bent out of shape with is really just our need to try to bring some predictability and control to our lives, because we don't control so much of it. We don't control any of it, actually. But
we don't control any of it. But also, my whole philosophy is the resourcing. Like the resource needs to meet the challenge. So the other weakness people have is an inability to communicate. What we talked about earlier is my insides go outside. The communication isn't like, what are you doing later? Because people will do these weirdo not communications. What they want to know is, can they use the car later? Instead of just asking that, they're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is all so weird. It's like, just say the thing. So
why do people do that, by the way? Is it like not to offend, or?
It's so many like gymnastics in their head of like not getting in trouble. Maybe they asked for something when they were a kid and they were yelled at. And so they learned how to like ask questions proximal to the thing, to gather the data, to make up the decision so that they don't bug the person. Don't bug the person.
But actually, it would end up bugging me a lot more. It's like, just get to the point.
Absolutely. I am much more of a, like, just transparently, like, tell me out loud what is going on here so I can come with you. Because I'm not, we'll both meet in the middle and put it all out there, put it on the table. But anyway, so a key issue is lack of communication skills too. So that their needs are chronically not getting met because they don't know how to say, can you please this? It's important to me because when you don't, I feel. Oh, you feel less than because I didn't put the toilet seat down? That might change the motivation. And put the toilet seat down. Like, that's not motivating. So this is like relationship 101, right? Like, is that an authentic need? So that's where the first step is for you to know yourself. Are you just being a dick? Just a jerk to yourself. Do you even like that person? Like, I don't like my jerk self. She's very fastidious about things. And this should be this way. And I was like, I don't want to give her the mic. So I want to be anyway. So no, I don't want to change you so I feel better because I don't like that. That's not even me anyway. That
Mm-hmm.
is the
Mm-hmm.
me. So there's this, we're having two conversations or multiple conversations like we always do, but who you give the mic to, the small self or your true self, that it takes a while to give the mic to your true self because it hasn't had the mic for so long. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to get my needs met. Oh, now I'm feeling authentic emotions and I'm vulnerable. Yeah. Welcome to being alive. Now we're alive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Good. You want to be safe and never feel feelings and never do anything? Cool. You could do that. But we're talking about authentic relationships, right? So you need to
Yeah.
know yourself to communicate to the other person
Yeah.
and then to start being poorly at it. Like, say, I'm trying to say something, but I don't know what to say, but I need to say
Mm-hmm.
it. Say something like that. And then they're like,
Mm-hmm.
at least know you're trying to figure something
You're
out,
trying to
right?
work it out. Yeah.
It's busy. Now you're coming together to do the thing. So the small self is separate.
Yeah.
The other big self is source. It's connection.
So it's the small self that really gets mired in this control, predictability, need for certainty, right?
You-
Really, it's
Right. Yeah.
right to be right. Um, so let's take it a little bit deeper. So people in relationships, um, a lot of it depends. A lot of people get in relationships young and then they stay with those people. Maybe they get married. Others will cycle through many relationships, but will continue the bad habits because, when you think about a lot of people who end up in a lot of relationships, it isn't necessarily coming from a place of power or choice. It's coming from, well, that one didn't work, so I'm going to go try and find another one. It's like this replacement, but it's like the old saying, wherever you go, there you are. So you end up just bringing that same small S self to each relationship and wonder why these relationships keep blowing up on me and not working. It's because you haven't done the work on your big S self. And so your small S self, the one that you say you don't want to give the mic to, keeps showing up in these relationships and it keeps not working, right? So I always say to people, if you're having problems in relationships and you've gone through multiples of them, you might want to consider it's not them, it's you,
Mm-hmm.
because you're the common denominator in all of this.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not most people really, really dive in their 40s, 50s, late 30s, maybe because they're like, wait a second.
Yeah. What's
That's
going on here?
I mean, like, that's just too weird to be like, they have the same this and the same that. And like, yes, because you're relating to reality the same way. And what you and I discuss where we want to take people isn't this like basic 101 relating. We want to take people to co-creative relationships. We want to
That's right.
to who you can become by being together.
Mm-hmm.
More you, if you can
Yeah.
go to these things.
When two big S people get into relationship, right? When two big S people get into relationship, there is an enormous amount of fulfillment and creativity and collaboration and fun that can emerge. And most relationships are just barely scratching, like they're on life support. Most relationships are on life support. And I can say that because most people
Mhm.
haven't done the emotional sobriety work that we talk about all the time in whole life architecture and the jungle and the gardener, etc. Most people in the world are still emotional teenagers. And
Absolutely.
so their small S is running the show.
Absolutely. Well, yep. I was going to say some stuff about politics, and I'm just going to reel it in. So we won't go there. But yeah, and the other thing is, the potential and possibility of relationship is to become a more whole version of yourself that you couldn't have done alone. I think. I think purpose is to relate and co-create, and then that feels deeply satisfying. Following those emotions. But most people are trying to be so safe to not be rejected. How can you relate? And so most people are relating from this place of like, oh, if you really like shame and like they're hiding and their personas and their roles, they're not actually relating to
Mm-hmm.
get the information from that other partner. I call it Mario coins. It's like the bidding, like you get something from that person that activates who you really are yourself. It doesn't mean you didn't already have it. But like, there's just this abundance. The point is, like, if people are losing what I'm saying, because it's kind of hard when you're in the struggle and you're in the war and you're like, what are you talking about now? Like Mario coins and creativity and possibility and joy, because creativity, possibility, and joy are really scary when you have this much fear in your system, when you have this much control in your system of like, am I going to get my needs met?
Mm-hmm.
That system thinks that's what works. But no, this other system of like peace, centeredness, like aware, all of the tools we talk about, now that place is the place to relate from. But most people are existing, right? Surviving.
They're just surviving. Another way of simplifying this that I've used in the past is you're in a healthy relationship, and by the way, most people aren't, but we want to help you get there. But you're in a healthy relationship when you relate to it from not what can I get from it, but what can I give to it.
Mm.
Right? Because if you can get to the place where you are showing up into the relationship from a what can I give, you're showing up as a complete and whole, powerful person, because you would have to be there in order to say, I'm full, I'm complete, therefore I have lots to give. And I want to give in this relationship as an act of co-creation. And if both people are saying, not what can I get, but what can I give, and they're both giving from that place, that's where the creativity piece gets activated, because now the 1+1 in the relationship isn't just 2, it becomes this emergent exponential, 11 or something. It's like coming to, and where I'm coming from with this is our work with the design shop method. When we work with companies to solve complex problems, put the romantic relationship aside. Businesses are in relationship. People who are in companies are in relationship to one another. And their small s self, their ego self, tends to always be showing up, trying to dominate whose will is going to be adhered to. Is it going to be this manager? Is it the CEO? Is it this, or that? And there's all this dynamic competitiveness and, frankly, infighting that tends to dominate a lot of corporate cultures. When we move people out of that environment into our design shop method, one of the principles is don't come here seeing what you can get from everyone, but what can you give through the process, and amazing stuff gets created. Well, that's at the level of a group where you're dealing with a company, but it's the same dynamics. It's the same principles. It's just how humans are relating.
Yeah. And it reminds you, like, what can I get out of this is going to keep you in the tallying.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they didn't do that quite right. So I don't know if that counts as a point. It feeds the small self. It gives the small self the mic. Like,
Well, even if you ask the question, what can I get? That implies you're coming from scarcity.
Yeah, and that you owe me something. So the biggest thing, when I talked to that lady at the bank, I was like, hey, yeah, how are people? They're entitled since COVID. Like, and then like the amount of uncertainty that keeps ramping up. It's like, it isn't that they're just stressed out or short or impatient. They're entitled. You owe me. This shouldn't be happening to me. Like, I was like, oh, fascinating. That does make.
And so once someone does the work to get to a place, and it's not like you're there and you're never going to have to deal with stuff again, because that's not life. But once you get the experience of yourself as being whole and complete, then the type of relationship conversations and dynamics, and I think anyone who's in a relationship and has been in one for a while and is, say, doing this kind of work to get to know themselves, their authentic big S self, as you put it, at some point, you're going to want to have a conversation with the person you're in a relationship with from a place of your big S self. Okay, we're not going to talk about petty stuff anymore. Let's explore values. Like, do we even share values? Right?
Great.
I think so many people get into relationship without even knowing what their values are. So because they don't even know what they are, how can they even expect, it wouldn't even come up, And if I ask the question and I don't know what mine are, I'm putting myself on the spot, because they're just going to reverse and ask me. And if I don't know, so it just never gets handled. But I would say that values fundamentally drive whether two interdependent people in a relationship are going to be good co-creators together. If you're not sharing the same values and are working towards at least a common direction, even if the outcome is unknown, this is kind of a waste of time if you don't share values.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like you're going along being yourself, not contorting yourself for others to the best of your ability, so that the other people that are like you can find you. So
Mm-hmm.
then they're like at the I don't know. I mean, how many cool people have you met just like randomly bopping around, right? Or just like
Mm-hmm.
some like how we met. Like now life becomes alive and you're participating with life and we can talk to that level of spirit starts to become alive and life becomes alive. And then now you can find those aligned people because on some level it's already done that you're
Mm-hmm.
tapped and now you could both tap into it together. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a unifying force that's going to even enhance the relationship even more. When you've forgotten each other and you've forgotten yourself, you're having a bad week, there's this other force that is generative and feeding both of you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And once you get to a place of, okay, so here's I'm starting to kind of see some sort of steps in my mind for people to kind of process this. Okay,
Hmm.
you maybe you're in a relationship, maybe you're not. First question to ask yourself, who's showing up to the relationship? Is it your small s self or your big S self? Right?
Mhm. The name of my new book. I'm going to consider my big ass self as like
That's the name of your new book?
should be. No, it isn't, but I think it might be.
Oh, okay, big S self. Okay. You want to be careful with just you want to be careful with how fast people say it because big S could be big ass self. Like you got to be
What
careful.
the
Yeah, your
entire
big ass self. Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
This entire
Anyway,
time. My joke in the back of my
that's
head.
what you kept hearing me say, your big ass self.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So is that large S self showing up? If you can get to that place where the petty ego, small s, is not showing up, then you're in a place where you can actually co-create and collaborate with the other person in relationship, assuming they're doing the same work too. And then the work then becomes, okay, so what are our values? That's important to figure out. Another one that people kind of get hung up on is, do you always have to be in agreement with the person that you're in relationship,
Right.
right?
So good. Yeah, I don't think you do. I think those values, once you've realized that level of like relationship, there's another word I wanted to use, but it's like community relationship. Once you realize, okay, we're creating together. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Come back. Bring it back.
Agreement. Do you always have to be into
No,
agreement?
you don't have to agree. So once you have those stabilizing factors, then you could be like, "Oh, I'd rather do this, I'd rather that," because you're both whole and complete. You don't need. So what we talked about before we started that wasn't recorded was I see a lot of people needing to be agreed with in order to feel heard.
Mm,
No, you're not hearing me.
mm,
Well, I am hearing you. I just don't agree with you.
right.
So different. And what that person is going through is that if you agree with me, I'm valid, I'm whole, I'm complete. So from that place of needing to be agreed with, that's where that person needs to do the work of like, you're valued, whole, and complete. Now you can have a conversation.
Yeah.
As long as that person doesn't feel complete because they're not agreed with, they're in a fight
Yeah.
to be relevant, to be loved. I mean, that's so intense to be talking about what type.
Mm, mm, I know.
So
I mean, the whole agreement thing is interesting because people who, you know, people who need others to agree with them to feel whole and complete, if you ever have that pop up, then that's an area where you need to do some more work on yourself because theoretically, you should be able to disagree in relationship and not have it fracture the relationship. And let's say it's something that you wanted to do and the other person doesn't want to do. There's no agreement there. You should still be able to go do the thing that you feel called to go
yeah,
do, and it shouldn't create a fracture in the relationship.
ideally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this gets to the, again, I think one of the traps that a lot of people in relationships fall into is that they feel like they have to do everything together. They have to be in that agreement.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And And the freedom that gets experienced when you finally release each other from that requirement, because you're doing the work to be whole and complete in and of yourself. You're creating that interdependent relationship. And I think, this is where it gets a little interesting with, we've talked before about the polyamorous movement that's it seems to be expanding and growing. Um, and there's something out there that I'm starting to think about as well, which is even that, though, is confining as an agreement in a way, right? So
I would
when you say I'm in a polyamorous relationship and that's our agreement, that's still a binding agreement. So you're still not truly interdependent, because there's still terms, there's still negotiations, there's still, you can do this only in this context, or if this, then that, or whatever, right? So, when you really pull on that thread of perfect, whole, and complete interdependence, it almost gets to the point where we shouldn't need to define our relationship by any sort of codified agreement style.
potentially.
What do you think about that? I'm actually just exploring this in my head right now as we're talking. I'm pulling it out. I'm like, okay, if you take it to the nth degree, where you don't need to be in agreement, including even the agreement that contextualizes your relationship.
Yeah. We would have to be non-ego beings at that point, because the point of the agreement is to come together. But so an agreement in my mind of a co-creative experience would be this is the agreement until it's not. And it's always allowed to not be. Like, hey, we've kind of decided on this. We've come together and shared our self-relationship with each other, and we've decided on this thing is something that's going to bind you in a good way, not in a constrictive way. Oh, wait, I didn't know what I didn't know. Now let's talk about it again. Now let's talk about, now you're at a co-creative thing. I think you need those agreements so that you can walk in the same path enough with the separation, with the freedom, full freedom, because you have the values. And also, if your values are the same, I'm in poly relationships, but they're like the values are there, and like transparency is there, and honesty is there, and that wouldn't be possible for me to trust if because those people need to be coming from a place where they have a good self relationship. So I can't trust people because they're feral, crazy humans. Like, I don't trust people because most people are going to devolve to their lowest self when they're in fear. And so how do we get to that state you're talking about? Yes, possibly possible. But I think at this moment, we're going to need those stepping stones so that we are coming together powerfully, not with control. But the key would be to go, is this controlling? And to really open the answer.
From my perspective, true creative power comes when we can always, always, always be at choice.
Yeah.
Right? So, and that which requires hyper presence, requires the ability to be in that inner self dialogue all the time, and to be in communication with others that we are relating to about the inner dialogue. But this goes to a point that we didn't really talk too much about, which is the last sort of holdout for true power is our need for predictability. See, the thing about agreements is they provide predictability.
Yeah.
But the thing about choice is it is entirely unpredictable when you're truly coming from a place of absolute choice, because I could choose one thing this morning and, being super present, choose something else this afternoon, which people I'm in relationship with will be like, this is craziness. I can't predict anything.
It's flaky. It could be seen as flaky. And I have gotten
seen as flaky.
Back a lot.
You've gotten that feedback?
Yeah. Like, oh, you wanted to do this, but now you're this. I'm like, yeah, but this is what I am right now. Like, and so it's a fine line.
It's a very feminine way of being, actually, when you think about it, because the feminine way of being is very much in flow, and it's very creative, and When I always think of metaphors like painting or something when I think of creativity and flow. And you think about the painter and they've got this canvas in front of them. And from moment to moment, they're, especially if they're painting freehand and it's not like stenciled in, right?
Yeah, yeah.
From moment, each brushstroke is a choice, is an act of creativity
Mhm.
versus being stenciled in. It's sort of the metaphor I'm using, like relationships that are, confined to a particular type of agreement. It's kind of like they're stenciled in. You
Yeah.
can't
And
color outside the lines.
yeah, which depletes the aliveness, which depletes that like the
Right.
let's almost like swerve in there and create something cool and magical and delightful. I say with singing, something I came as in my mind of a live vulnerability is that when I'm singing, you learn the notes so you know the notes. So it's the same thing as the
Mm-hmm.
river creates the flow for the river. So sometimes you need the riverbank to be like, I'll be there at 3 in order. The riverbank serves the river,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that it can do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't combine it. And we've talked about that. But anyway, when you're singing, you should remain present and telling the story and feeling the feelings, not like, what note am I singing? There's an
Mm-hmm.
alive vulnerability to not knowing if I'm going to hit the note if I'm not thinking about the note.
Right.
And that's exciting.
Yeah. Giving everyone some kind of applicable takeaways. So we've been talking today about safety in a relationship. How do you feel safe? We've connected safety to going within, focusing on the self, being selfish. We talked a little bit about being selfish today, in the good way of being selfish, like taking care of yourself, attending to the self that you are. And then we defined your big S self or your small S self. The small S being your ego, the petty part of you that is nitpicky in your relationships, or even just in life generally, which really comes from a need, an inner sort of insecure need to want to control things so that things are predictable, so that things are known. Um,
Insecure. I just want people to
yeah,
look at the word insecure, like the lack of security, but
yeah,
also I did a ceremony, and then when I hung out with that word long enough, it was insecure. To be secure inside is the solution to insecurity, but that
yeah,
safety and insecurity go together. So that desire for security from the small self. Anyway,
yeah.
fun wordplay.
Yeah, yeah. And once you start to get to that place where you experience yourself as whole and complete, and you're not trying to, from a place of insecurity or for the need for predictability, control the other person, you enter into a totally different place. And that place is a place of co-creativity, collaboration to create something through your relationship, vis-a-vis your relationship, that can be 10 times X, which you ever thought was possible. Now, the important thing, what we talked about today, when you start that journey, is to check in with the person you're relationship with and ensure that your values align, and which would require you to know your values. So, I guess a lot of what we've been talking about in terms of takeaways, the biggest takeaway is start to relate to your relationship as a relationship with yourself before even anyone else. Even if you're in a relationship, pause all of the animosity, all of the friction, all of the fear, all of the need to control, all of the need to predict. Just pause that, give yourself some time. It's going to be different for everybody. And go within and start asking why. As you were saying, Jenna, right? Why do I need these things to be like this? Why do I get upset when she does that or he does that? The power of why can be a really impactful opener for us to realize how petty we actually go through life,
And
generally
what
speaking.
need am I trying to get met?
Yeah.
Need am I trying to get met? And then I would add, don't just thinky think, right? Feel in your body what sensations come up,
Mm-hmm.
what needs to be met. Is it in your gut? Is it in your heart? Is it in your throat? And then pay attention to those sensations so you're listening with your body and your thoughts at the same time. But that's really key too. Like, what is the need? Not thinking
Mm-hmm.
about, what is it? What is it? What is it? What is it? You want your body and your heart to answer also.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. When we talk about emotional sobriety, we're talking about the ability to totally feel all of our emotions, not to repress them. And this is actually, I would say, feelings lead in this case. It's like shut your left brain down, ignore the thinking mind, and feel into this. And then once you get to that place where you start to dissolve some of that need to control, and you'll start to feel a lot of freedom and sort of space opening up. Because we've been taught that, we've been taught by culture that we should always be in control of everything, to the point where it's so crazy. A hurricane happens in Florida, and the first thought people have is, who's to blame for the building that just collapsed? Well, the hurricane, and I guess, yes, we can do some forensic thing, and, there was a crack and it was in the, bottom of the foundation, and it should have been addressed 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Life happens. And sometimes we don't notice these cracks.
Yeah. I just, to bring this to something specific, my client, her mom just passed away, and we spent a lot of her session on like her thoughts were around like what she did wrong. I didn't take enough pictures. I didn't do this. How did I not see that beforehand? I said, well, what is the benefit to feeling these feelings? The answer is they're easier to feel than that authentic feeling of grief. These were more familiar. And so similar to that, I was just showing that example of like what people focus on because they're out of control. Her mom's gone. She can't bring her back. It's just ultimate out of control, ultimate vulnerability.
Yeah.
I'm gonna die too. Like freaks people out. And then that desire to be like, oh, how do we know the thing so the thing doesn't happen again? Like that desire for control, so that God forbid this thing happens again. And then what? You're going to be resourced. You're going to figure it out. You're going to keep going. Like just people's need to never have anything go wrong.
Yeah. So some takeaways, I think, are the big one, really. It's not even a lot of little takeaways. I think the big one that we want to leave you with is, if you're in a relationship where you're feeling burnt out, exasperated, if you're in a relationship where you're coming from, what can I get out of this? And you'll know that if your complaint is, they're not giving me what I need. So you may be trapped in a, what can I get and extract from this type of dynamic. That, if you need predictability, if you need control, if you find yourself in petty arguments, it's a good time to hit the pause button and go inward and start to ask the why question. Why am I getting upset about this? Why do I need this? Why do I need so much control? Why do I need predictability? And you're going to discover a lot about yourself. And then I would suggest, as another takeaway, you might invite your partner to have an open conversation about what you discovered. You might even, in your relationship, invite your partner to do the same thing. Let's go into our corners and both ask each other internally, or to ourselves, why do we need these things? Why do we get frustrated? And then come back together and share what has come up. That just opening up that dialogue and that transparency is going to go a long way to helping to start to change the trajectory of your relationship to one of creativity versus one of control.
Yeah.
And
I would add another question. If you're doing that in a couple, what am I making this mean? So it's an ontological question, right? What am I making this mean that you are doing this behavior I think should be different?
Yeah.
Make it that you're being responsible. What am I making this mean? Not this is what's true about you. What I'm making it mean is that you don't care about me because you don't show up at 7 when you know it. I don't like when people are late. What are you making that mean? Like, it's going to reveal what you're emotionally reacting to.
That's
It's
right.
not when they're showing up. It's what you're making it mean. So that's a really great communication activity.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, we'll leave it there. There's so much more we could talk about this, but there always is. Want to encourage all of you to explore some of the stuff that we talked about today. Maybe try it on yourself, or if you're in a relationship with your partner. And thank you for joining us, for jumping in. We're going to cover some more fantastic topics on our next episode of The Most Important Conversations. But until then, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
That concludes this episode of The Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at tmicglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.